So, dear friends, we are almost at the close of the month of November. I'm sure it was a good experience for you in this month. The weather is changing also, and we see already people coming out with their jackets, with some warm clothes, etc. I hope the Christmas also will be present, not too cold, because the cold affects the people. And I also know that the poor people suffer more during the cold. They have no shelter. Many of them who are sleeping on the streets, perhaps they need some little cover. And so the cold affects everybody. Let me begin with a message that God has for us this week. Once again, it's a very simple one, but very, very thought-provoking. It's called the message of the talents that God gives us. The word talent in English means that a quality or perhaps a characteristic that one is endowed with. We say you are very talented, you are very much resourceful, you are a good singer, you are a good dancer. What a beautiful talent that you have perhaps in your games. We are seeing the World Cup, the T50 matches these days, the World Cup, and fortunately we say that many of our Indian players are very, very talented. They have not lost a single game up to now, and the finals is going to be on the 19th Sunday, which India has already secured its berth. Our beloved cricketer, Mr. Kohli, Virat Kohli, has already scored 50 centuries. We say he is very talented. But biblically, the word talent, as we see in this gospel, in this parable, it is something worth in money, rich resources, and in fact one talent, what we are told in those times of the Jews and the Palestinians, perhaps 2000 years ago, one talent meant almost 20 years work, 20 years salary or wages of a worker, which means a big amount, something like lakhs of rupees given to somebody as one, perhaps an amount or installment as such. And so the gospel, as I said, is very simple. The landlord calls his servants because he is going for a journey or something, and he gives them 5, he gives them 2, he gives them 1. And therefore he tells them go. And it's understood that they have to make use of it and return. It's like a free sort of installment loan that is given to them, something that perhaps he gives them in order to benefit for himself and for them too. And so the 5 comes back after some time, and the landlord has come and says, here you have your 5 and 5 more which I have traded and made. The second one also brings the double of what is given to him, but the misery of the third one talent person who he says, sir, I was very much scared of you. You reap when we are not sown at all. You are a hard man, and therefore I was scared of you, and I went and put it in the mud or perhaps in the soil, and I hid it. And the landlord is very angry. The master is very angry with him and says that how could you have wasted, because you have not used it and you have brought it back, and therefore he punishes him. So what does this parable mean to us? First of all, God is generous. God is generous. Just like the servants, we did not have to bother. He had his money, perhaps he was, each talent, as I said, it was worth lakhs of rupees, and 5 talents, 2 talents and 1 talent, etc. He was endowed with so much richness. He did not have to There was no need for him to call and take a risk, a big risk. Who knows if the 5 man never came back or the 2 man never came back. But God is generous. God is very, very generous with us. Every one of us is doted with some talent or other, some gift or other, and therefore God gives gifts. There's that beautiful saying, God gives and gives. God gives and forgives. Man gets and forgets. Man gets and forgets. So therefore God is generous. Perhaps this is a moment for us in our life to analyze what we have been endowed with. What is this thing that God has given us out of His generosity, out of His broad-heartedness? And perhaps we will find many, many things. One of the meanings, or rather the interchange of the alphabets in the word talent means also latent. Latent means something's hidden. Perhaps it's not obvious to us immediately to say that. There are many people who are a bit negative to say that I have nothing, I am not endowed with anything, I don't want to come, I don't want to appear. They are so scared, as it were, that they don't want. The second one is the negative side of it. Many of us are one talent characteristics. One talent characters. What do I mean? The one talent man was so scared. He was so afraid. He didn't want to take a risk. He just wanted to go and hide it so as to give it back. Perhaps many of us are like that. God has given us many talents, but we don't want to use them. We are critical. There are certain persons perhaps endowed with so many things, but there's a small, perhaps something that troubles him, a small problem, a small incident, a small perhaps misbehavior from somebody, or maybe certain mistake that he himself makes, or anything of that sort, that bogs us down. I am not going to get up, I am not going to walk, I am not going to do this, I am not going to help because I have a problem. Suddenly your problems become so big that the bigger, what we call the eye or the aspect of God, what God has given, is forgotten. I say we are one talent characters. We just have buried somewhere what God has given us, the talent part. Thirdly, I say that this parable also tells us of the trust that the master has in his servants and the trust that God has in each one of us. Very often it does happen that suddenly you're asked to take a responsibility and you wonder why, and you wonder how did I was I ever entrusted with this? But then people do well. Sometimes they say, there is grace in the chair. You are suddenly appointed the president of something, or secretary of something, or perhaps in your school you are a monitor. And then you realize that I am not worthy. I never have got that talent. But suddenly something in you sort of comes up. It's welling up of certain resources that are inside. And you see that ultimately you have succeeded because someone trusted in you. Perhaps your parents suddenly, your mother or father says, we are going for holidays, or perhaps going there, but take care of a house. You say, hey, how can I am very small, I can't be trusted, I am scared. But the parents are trusting you. And after a month when you come back, they see you not only smiling, but perhaps doing so many things. The trees are taken care of, the house is taken care of, the house is cleaned up. They have trusted you. Imagine what means God places His trust in you. Like the landlord who trusted his servants. Fourthly, I see that this parable also tells us about our responsibility. Our responsibility are able to serve others, our ability to serve others, allow God's grace and our efforts to join hands so that every day is lived in a very special way. We can't be lazy. We can't waste our talents. I met a student who came to ask some help in the I think 11th or 12th standard, and most of our institutions had this cutout percentage of 50-60, and he was not qualifying, and ultimately it's as good as he went for a institution where he had to pay money in order to get the seat. The mother came with him, and the mother was very sad. Bishop, she said, my son was a very, very bright student. In the 9th standard, he almost sort of topped the class, but suddenly he collapsed in the 10th standard. I said, did he get sick? No, nothing happened to him. He just wasted his time. He was busy with his computer, with his mobile, and with his friends. And he started studying just 1 month or 2 months before the exams. It's not enough. And that is determining his future now. Of course, he has realized it, but too late. For many it happens to us, that we waste the trust that God gives us and we don't do anything. On the other hand, we can work hard. The first reading today, the reading is from Proverbs. It speaks of a woman, it speaks of a wife, and a woman who is active and industrious. She is active. She makes use of every small minute that she gets to do something for the house, something for the husband, something for the children, something to decorate her house. And the Bible calls her more precious than the jewels. A woman who is industrious, active. And fortunately, we have so many of them. In our Archdiocese, I am so happy to say that the women are somehow coming up, and they are also effecting or creating ripples in their own family, in their own society, by their organization, by their being together. And so this woman that is referred in the book of Proverbs, she works with wool and flax. The wool, because perhaps she wants to stitch something for her children. She keeps herself completely busy. 2 minutes are there, she will do that. Something is put on the oven there, by the time it comes, she does something else. She keeps herself. Women are multitasks, they call it. And not only that, works with willing hands, she holds the spindle, so many things that she is doing. And therefore, it is also said that she opens her hands to the poor and the needy. So this is the responsibility, the work that we have to keep ourselves busy. 5 into 5, 10 talents, 4 into 4, 8 talents, perhaps 2 into 2, 4 talents, and finally, that one man, he disappoints us all. He just wastes his time. Finally, we say that, I found this beautiful quotation somewhere, God gives gifts that we may gift ourselves. God gives us gifts. God gives us talent, so as that we also can be gifting ourselves to the others, helping the others. If God has given you strength, if God has given you muscles, if your God has given you brains, it's not only for yourself. God doesn't want only you to this one, but God wants to use it, you to use it for the sake of others. So therefore God gives us gifts so that we ourselves can be gifts to the others. It's a beautiful thought. So my dear friends, I am very happy to leave these thoughts before you, just to say in short, first of all, to say that God is generous. God is generous, and God has been generous with you and me. Secondly, many of us, perhaps we have disappointed God because we are one talent characters. The one talent man goes and hides it, keeps it, and he waits for the master to come to give it. Thirdly, the trust that God puts in each one of us. God trusts us. Our superiors trust us. Our parents trust us. And therefore we should not waste that trust element that trust deposit that is kept with us. Fourthly, as I said, allow God's grace and our efforts to be combined. So keep yourself busy, keep yourself always doing, keep yourself producing. Of course, sometimes you may fail. Sometimes, it's a risk. The 5 became 5 more talents, but it could have been that they could have lost also, because some business also. But risk is a risk, and it's worth taking a risk. And finally, God gives gifts that we may gift ourselves. So I think these are beautiful reflections that we have on this Sunday, and I ask you to think over them, reflect over them, and examine your own life, your family, your business, and many other things that God has endowed you with.